Welcome everybody to today's meeting of the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As usual, this meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website. It'll also be available for viewing after the meeting. Can I please ask all members and officers to have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. And I just want to take a moment to welcome Mr. Chapman, who's joining us as a new member of this committee, so welcome. And I haven't received any apologies for today's meeting. So item number 1 on today's agenda is to ratify the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of November. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Thank you. Moving on to item 2, which is question time. I received a question from Mrs. Whiting, who is present in the meeting today. The question and its response has been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on these. I will now also invite Mrs. Whiting to ask a supplementary question if you have one. I will remind you that your supplementary question should be used to clarify the reply you have been given and should not raise any new issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a supplementary question, which I have already sent through, so it should be okay. Thank you for a comprehensive answer to my question. For clarification, is it possible to state A, how many of the 24 NEET care experienced young people in the 18 to 25 age group have been in custody? And B, have their learning needs been fully assessed since leaving custody?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would have to take that away to get the exact number for you, but I'm happy to do that and provide that information.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Whiting. Thank you. I've also received 2 questions for item 3, which is from electing members. The first question is from Mr. Innes, who is present today. Nice to see you. Thank you. I believe you received your response. Mr. Innes, I will now invite you to ask a supplementary question if you have one. I would remind you that your supplementary question should be closed to clarify the reply and should not raise any new issues. Thank you, Mr. Innes. Thank you. We also have a second question from a member, which is from Mrs. Bottomley. Thank you for being here today as well. Thank you. The question and its response has been circulated to all the members prior to the start of the meeting and should be taken as read. Mrs. Bottomley, if you have a supplementary question, would you like to share it now? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the response. While I appreciate that the proposal and therefore the consultation around the proposal suggests supporting providers with an uplift of up to £10 on top of the funded hours, what is the evidence that this would cover the costs of providing specialist support in more mainstream settings? If there is not robust data to support this, it calls into question the validity and the reliability of the consultation and the proposal as a whole.
Thank you for your question. It's important to reiterate that within Leicestershire, we currently have many children with significant and complex needs accessing mainstream early years provisions at the moment, and they're thriving in those settings. The proposals include additional Office of Specialist training, additional early years staff, and additional funding bands for providers. It's also important to note that most children historically and currently attend a specialist nursery on a dual placement basis, where they also attend a mainstream provision as well. So this isn't a cost-saving proposal. Our modelling demonstrates that the funding would allow childcare settings to provide one-to-one support where needed to ensure the best outcomes for children in those placements. We want to ensure we give families an equitable offer to use their free early education entitlement hours in the way that suits them, which may include longer days or time during the holidays, which many providers also offer. And the consultation gives everybody the opportunity to give their views on the proposals and help us to plan next steps.
Thank you, Mrs. Bottomley. And I think I speak for lots of members here. There are significant questions around the item. I'm sure it will come back to scrutiny at some point after the consultation. Thank you. You're both welcome to stay and enjoy the meeting, or you can leave if you'd like. Thank you. So now I'd like to move on to item number 5, and that's declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations? Brilliant, thank you. And then item number 6, declarations of the party whip. Do any members wish to declare that? Perfect. Number 7, I haven't received any petitions, so move on to the first substantive item, which is item number 8, and that is the medium-term financial strategy for 26, 27, 29, 30. This can be found on pages 11 to 52 of your agenda packs. Members should have received a copy of the process, which is slightly different to how a normal meeting would run. And we will discuss each section in turn, and there'll be an opportunity for members to ask questions on that particular section of the report. Sharon Cook, Interim Director of Children and Families, Tim Brown, Interim Director of Education, Inclusion and Additional Needs, will present the report. I also believe there's someone else joining us today who you'll introduce in a minute to the committee. I will invite the directors and cabinet lead member to briefly introduce the report before we scrutinise the proposals against the process I've already shared. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. If I can just take the opportunity to introduce members to Kay Fletcher, who's just taken up the Assistant Director post for Targeted Early Help and Children's Social Care as part of the other arrangements that you've just described in Children and Families. So this is Kay's first time at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so she's here to observe how it works. Thank you. So members have the report in front of you that I hope you've been able to read. The detail of the medium-term financial strategy for the Children and Family Services Department for 26, 27 to 29, 30. The first part of the report down to paragraph 5 outlines for the committee the policy framework, previous decisions and legislation in which the department works and needs to adhere to. I will take this part of the report as read by members, but I'm happy when we get to the questions to answer any questions on that specific introduction. If we take you over on the report, both paragraph 7 outlines in detail all of the key legislation and strategic plans that the department needs to work to and covers our statutory duties and responsibilities to children and families within Leicestershire. And paragraph 8 onwards outlines for committee members the responsibilities under equality implications and the human rights implications. So I'll take that part of the report as read, but as I said previously, happy to answer any points of clarification later. Paragraph 14 to 16 takes committee members through the background of the current MTFS report presented and set out to Cabinet on the 16th of December 2025, a copy of which has been circulated for the committee's information. It's important to note that the revised MTFS for 2026 to 2030 projects a funding gap of 23 million in the first year that will need to be balanced by the use of earmarked reserves. There is then a gap of 49 million in year 2, rising to 106 million in year 4, based on the assumption of a 2.99 council tax increase, appreciating that no decision has been made around that at this moment in time. So the key parts of the report that I want to take the committee through start at paragraph 17, and that is around the strategic change programme. So demand for children and family services continues to increase, with growth of over 61 million projected over the period of the MTFS. And that's required to meet children and family services needs before intervention. And that growth arises largely from the demographic growth within the county and an increased need for costly social care provision types. The continuing impact of the pandemic and the cost of living crisis provide additional challenges, which are likely to have far-reaching effects and a cumulative impact on the families within the county, which we are seeing and are likely to continue to see family breakdown and the need for care services. In response to these pressures, the department has in recent years embarked on several fundamental transformation programmes, both to the two key leaders on those programmes have been reported to this committee previously. The first of these was Defining Children's Services for the Future, which was a programme that targeted and looked in detail about our demand capacity and the changes we needed to make around the what is the targeted family help and children's social care part of the service. And then a similar programme that began for transforming SEND and inclusion. So both these, the results of these two transformational programmes are now embedded as business as usual. Other key savings are delivered through partnerships such as our Children's Innovation Partnership, Barnardo's, which has seen us develop, along in partnership with Barnardo's, a number of much needed residential provision for a number of children and young people with different and varied needs. But organisationally, despite the delivery of extensive savings already, a significant gap remains, which emphasises the need for some step change approach and some further planning and service design and models that will look at how we need to move forward as part of the efficiency review that's currently being undertaken across the authority and will be referenced in more detail later in the report. So moving on to paragraph 21, the proposed revenue budget, the table under paragraph 21 summarises the proposed 26-27 revenue budget and provisional budgets for the next 4 years, and a full detail of that budget is attached to the report in Appendix A for your information. So detailed service budgets have been compiled based on a no pay, no price inflation, as a central contingency is held to be allocated to services as necessary to cover those two items. So before I move on with the report, I would pause there whether there are any questions or comments at that first part of the report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pugsley, I won't come to you on every occasion, but please indicate if you want to talk. I know there's quite a few opportunities today, but do you have any comments from the outset?
Not too much at this point, Chair. I think I'll take this opportunity firstly just to thank all the officers for the hard work that's gone into the report. I will say from my point of view that demand and complexity for a lot of the department services has evidently increased, and the MTFS that we're presenting today does demonstrate that reality, but it also highlights a lot of the work that we've been doing around transformation, smarter commissioning, and the continued focus on children's outcomes. And I'll leave it there, but I will look forward to comments from the committee as we go through. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we go through today, there are a lot of items just in this one report alone. So your follow-up questions to the initial question, if we can keep them to a minimum and maybe follow up with officers afterwards, I'm sure they'll be willing to answer any extra supplementary questions as we go along, just to keep the meeting moving. So on that part of the report, are there any questions that any members would like to ask? Brilliant, speedy. Here we go.
Thank you. So paragraph 26 is the start of the part of the paper that covers the growth. So growth over the next 4 years in the Children and Family Service budget totals 61.55 million. This is mainly due to pressures on the social care placement budget arising from increased numbers of children requiring very costly residential provision and a continued increased demand of unaccompanied asylum seeking children, which results in an increased funding pressure when those children become care leavers. The details of those two areas I'll come on to in much more detail in the report. Growth assumptions continue and will continue to be reviewed at regular intervals, and where necessary, any changes be reflected as part of the final MTF report that goes to Cabinet in February. So paragraph 27 and the table below outlines for the committee the budget increases under each area of growth and each item of growth. But I'll now go through in detail what those growth areas are. So, social care placement. So, committee members will be able to see that there is a significant projected growth around social care placements from 24.5 million in 26-27, rising to 51 million by 29-30. Children's social care placement budgets compromises a variety of settings to look after children as part of our statutory responsibility to those children who are in care of the local authority who may be at risk of harm and unable, for a variety of usually safeguarding reasons, not able to live with their family members. A significant growth pressure relates largely to the increasing costs of children's social care placement mix, which is largely due to a national change in the demand and numbers of children in residential provision. So the market is a very difficult market for the placements and the homes that we are seeking for our children and young people. The MTFS for the financial year assumes budgeted residential numbers by March 26 to be around 120 young people in residential placement. That includes those young people where we're providing a parent and child placement, where an assessment is completed, usually very young children, usually babies, with one or both parents as part of usually as part of court proceedings. But paragraph 30 shows that the budget setting that took place that looked at those numbers rising to 120 was showing until the end of Q4, showed that our demand and our projections were relatively stable. However, as paragraph 31 outlines in detail and provides a graph to show that growth, the numbers did start to rise sharply, and current projections for the financial year see that this number number of youngsters in residential care is likely to rise to 133, and if that happens, that's an 11% increase on the budget and the projected budget. So of this overall increase in numbers, a small but financially significant increase is the number of children who we have to place in unregistered or activity-based placements. And we can see that from May of 25, that number started to rise. So these are children, for background, any child that is in our care has to be and should lawfully be in a provision that is registered with Ofsted, who via certain regulations and conditions ensure that establishment and home is registered to provide the right levels of care. We sadly, as every authority across the country, are seeing an increased number of youngsters where we're not able to allocate and locate and find that registered provision. The numbers within Leicestershire remain relatively low. Those children have significant senior management oversight, and efforts take place on a daily basis to move those youngsters to a registered provision. But we can see in paragraph 32 and 33, that over the past 4 years, those numbers have grown. As of November 25, there were 11 young people in such provision. Most of those young people don't stay, fortunately, in that provision for long because of our efforts to locate a registered home. I do know that as of today, we have 10 young people in those circumstances, two of whom, one is returning home this week and one is moving to a registered provision. So we're constantly reviewing. But it's an unfortunate position that we are in, that some children are in unregistered activity placements. As paragraph 34 onward outlines that there's clear evidence that the children in these placements, in unregistered placements, have experienced high levels of trauma and have complex disability and special educational needs that result in breakdown in family relationships, or for those youngsters who are already in our care and already living in a registered provision or with foster carers, that placement breaks down. The pressures on those placements break down. And for some, they move to the unregistered or unregulated placements. Because of the level of complexity that I've outlined from a legal and regulatory point of view, we shouldn't have children in this position. Those children tend to have the most complex needs, and therefore those providing activity type unregistered placements tend to charge higher rates of fees for those children. So the two things are a real difficulty and point of pressure for the reasons that I've said. So paragraph 36 just emphasises and provides you with the detail that I've hopefully given of the reassurance of senior management oversight of that group of children. There is a weekly meeting that is chaired by the assistant director. I, as director, have oversight of those children, the plans. We ensure they have weekly visits. But the cost for those children and their placements is significantly higher than children in registered provision. And paragraph 37 provides you with some of the detail. Paragraph 36 provides you with the detail of what those cost. Paragraph 37 outlines for you that on occasions we have to make the decision to detain a young person's liberty because we are so concerned from welfare point of view that their behaviour is causing significant harm and risk to either themselves or to others. So these are young people who have suffered extreme trauma, usually present with very challenging mental health issues. They may be young people who are absconding. They may be inflicting very serious self-harm upon themselves or violence towards others. If we make that decision to apply to secure a young person, that decision, although the immediate decision can be signed off by a director for 72 hours, that decision has to go before the court. So to give committee some reassurance that these are very extreme sets of circumstances, and they are circumstances that go before the court for a judge to make a decision. It's not down to a particular officer to make those decisions. Very unusually for this last year, we've had 3 young girls who are in secure provision or have been in secure provision. That is really, really unusual. Most years we don't have any youngsters in that provision, and the most we've ever had up until this year has been 1 young person. So to have 3 young women in that circumstances is very unusual. It's not unusual across the sector, and it's not unusual in discussions with other authorities, but it is unusual circumstances for us. And as paragraph 37 outlines, the cost of those placements is significantly high. For one of those young people, the maximum amount it's cost us has been £37,000 a week, and for the other £33,000 a week. So we're talking about a significant financial cost that is closely monitored, and I'm pleased to say is coming down as those young people are making some progress. But as paragraph 37 outlines, the market providing such provision has increased their costs significantly, because previously such a placement we would have been looking at roughly £15,000 a week. Paragraph 38 takes you for members through the section 25, which is the legal regulations and framework on which children are insecure that's been provided in the report, so members have got that level of detail. Paragraph 39 onwards takes you through the weighted average weekly cost of residential provision is high. There are three key contributing factors that increase that cost, and they are listed in A to C under paragraph 39. So it's the cohort of children in residential care. We're seeing an increased complexity of our young people and their lived experiences when they come into care, the trauma that they've experienced and their life experiences result in very, very complex mental health difficulties, sometimes in behaviour that is violent to themselves or to others. That can include youngsters that have been criminally exploited, and go missing repeatedly. So the court agrees to a deprivation of liberty, as previously explained. The age of children entering residential provision is a lower age, a younger age rather. So previously, children entering residential provision would have been 13 years of age and above, but we've seen and are seeing, and again this is a national issue, that we have younger children, much younger children who are coming into residential provision. Their complexities are high, but also the prognosis for the number of years that they could be in that provision and that home is also higher because of the young age when they come in. We obviously do all we can to work with those children to get them to a position where they can step down to a family-based placement. But the age of youngsters coming into residential care is a factor within the residential costs. And then third but not least is the market pressures and sufficiency. So lack of provision means that those providers out there, private providers, are able to charge increased fees to care for some of the children. So the key focus for us, and it's detailed later in the report, has been about increasing our own residential provision. So the hold of the market becomes much lower. And later in the report, I'll talk about the smarter commissioning. So in summary, current in years projections when we're looking forward indicate the future financial growth will be essential to sustain service delivery, meet strategic objectives and our statutory obligations to these children. Paragraph 41 takes you through the pressure around social care staff and the increased demand and caseload management. So the department continually focuses on preventing where it's safe and possible for children coming into care. So we work tirelessly with families to build that resilience, knowing that the best place for most children is with their family members. But for those children where sadly that is not possible, we have a responsibility to make sure that the care that we provide them is of a high standard. You can see from paragraph 41 that although our numbers of children in care have grown, per 10,000 of the population, Leicestershire is lower than comparable authorities. So that I think just emphasises that although our numbers have grown and although there are pressures and concerns, our numbers of children that we're able to keep at home is much higher than a lot of other authorities. So the number of children looked after continues to increase steadily in Leicestershire. This is due partly to demographic growth, but a combination of those social economic pressures outlined earlier. Complexity of needs, child poverty, mental health challenges for both children and their adults, and safeguarding concerns continue to be the key risks for our children. Currently, there are 785 looked after children in Leicestershire, so that represents a 7.5% increase in the last 12 months. As a result, investment in additional frontline social care capacity is required to ensure appropriate workloads for our workers, to ensure that they can fulfill statutory responsibilities, see children and families as we need to, and ensure that we are completing purposeful work with those children and families. So failure to secure this investment risks the service instability, inability to meet statutory and safeguarding responsibilities. And if we don't make the environment in which our workers practice a positive one, if social workers were to leave us for another authority, we would then see an increased cost in agency staff. So the growth that we're proposing around the social care workforce is to provide, be able to respond to the demands within the family safeguarding service in particular. And paragraph 44 onwards takes members through the detail of the work that's completed within that service. And point A and B talks about the failure to meet statutory and safeguarding responsibilities. We need to remember these are to some of our most vulnerable children, so failure to meet those responsibilities could result in something very serious happening to a child, and a reduce in the quality of service. So recent data and audits reveal that we have a higher number of child protection plans, looked after children, and court proceedings, indicating a growing workload, but also a growing complex workload. We have, since November 24, had a weighted caseload modelling system that's helped us look at demand and capacity, and that system, that model, has helped us identify the growth that's needed within that part of the service. Paragraph 46 takes you through the transforming, send and inclusion. So overall demand through the front door in terms of education, health and care plans has continued to rise. That's further illustrated for members in the chart within the report. At the end of November 25, there were 8,745 children in the county who had an education, health and care plan in place. That represents a 22% increase since January 25 and 192% increase since January 2016. So recent increases in demand are being seen nationally and are likely to be the result of uncertainty on the future SEND reform caused an anticipated government schools white paper, with families and others being anxious to make those applications. Paragraph 47 onwards tells members about the TISL programs, so the transformational program referred to earlier. It takes you through in paragraph 47, 48 and 49 the work of that program and the success that that program has seen in looking at processes, how the system works, increasing capacity to enable schools to support children the need for an education, health and care plan, but also ensuring that when children require such a plan, that it's a timely plan and it's monitored and reviewed in a timely way. So whilst the TISL programme has now been concluded and moved into business as usual, recent unanticipated rises in demand has reinforced that the SEND system remains unsustainable, and there continues to be uncertainty as outlined around the white paper. Paragraph 51 onwards takes you through the areas of work that have been completed and the focus on the service and department to develop a strategy about belonging, so children feeling that they are personally accepted, respected, included and supported within their education and social environments. So we have children and young people who feel safe and valued and cared for within those education settings. We know that those children are much more likely to experience academic success, positive social connections and a confidence and being able to grow and develop within their communities. And paragraph 53 takes you through the work of what's hopes we're working towards as part of that belonging in education strategy. So paragraph 54 takes you through the areas that are being developed as ongoing work around SEND. So developing new support offers to mainstream schools, the introduction of a branded model for education, health and care plans, which gained approval from Cabinet in July 2025. More efficient processing of requests for assessments and completion of those assessments, improvement in how education, health and care plans are reviewed to ensure that all children on such plans have an annual review, and we know that those can be confident that those children who need a plan have a plan and it's an up-to-date and relevant plan for them. And improvements also to placement recording processes. We're expanding the commissioning offer for education and SEND for children. So the work around smarter commissioning that's seen success within children's social care is being extended to make sure that we can commission, and where children do need specialist education provision, that is provided, is a best match and matches needs for children. So growth in the budget, paragraph 55 onwards talks about growth in the budget will ensure sufficient budget capacity exists across the relevant services to manage this increased demand and subsequent impact on workload capacity within the service, but also provide the capacity to support all the activities and improvement work that's been outlined above in the report. So in summary, the increasing demand for education, health and care plans is placing significant pressure on workload management within that part of the service. As more children require tailored support, have case complexity, the administrative workloads are rising, making it harder to maintain those timely assessments and intervention. And that surge also has an impact on other parts of the service, including educational psychology. And educational psychologists play a critical role in assessing children who may require an education, health and care plan. So paragraph 66 takes members through the schools and early years finance regulations, the cost of services such as the SEND assessment and education psychology fall to the local authority budget. However, the financial benefit is through reduced placement costs, which is important for that work to complete to see that reduction in such costs. Paragraph 67 onwards takes you through the other area of growth, which is around unaccompanied asylum seeking unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So the increased demand and cost is outlined there from 0.8 million in 26-27, rising to 4.45 million by 29-30. So the budget is largely due to the continued increase in children in care and care leavers, which requires that greater resource requirement to meet their needs. This in part is the impact and development of dispersal hotels and the National Transfer Scheme, and that paragraph outlines for members how the numbers of young people any authority needs to take, how that works on the ratio of how they work out, how many unaccompanied asylum-seeking children should come to one particular area. The authority does receive funding for those children who are in care, but no consideration is given to the numbers of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children when they become care leavers. So as majority of these young people are older, in the older age bracket of children in care, when they come to us, they very soon move to having a care leaving status. So when they're 18 plus, they have a care leaving status. And as the report outlines for members, that number of care leavers in this category is increasing, but the amount of government funding that we receive for care leavers is a lot less than we receive for them whilst they're in care. So, and the bottom of paragraph 69 outlines for members into 70 outlines what those particular costs are. So paragraph 70 and 71 outlines for you the work that's been taking place across the department as part of the Smarter Commissioning to ensure that we're driving down the costs while still meeting needs.
If I can just pause you there, because I
Sorry?
think we can have an opportunity for questions on that growth section. That's all. You've got to paragraph 70. So I just want to keep us honest. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I was just going to go for growth for children with disability and then stop, but it's all right.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm going by numbers on here. So
Yeah.
would you like to finish? I don't want to interrupt you.
It may just help if I do the growth for
Perfect.
disabled children and Oakfield. It will just give members the full growth picture.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So paragraph 72 onwards takes you through the increased growth for disabled children's services, growing from 1.38 million in 26-27, rising to 2.35 million by 29-30. The paragraphs below outline for members the increased demand of supporting children with some of the most complex needs and disabilities. It talks about the increase in direct payment packages, but also hopefully outlines for members that that is more cost effective than some of the more costly residential provisions should those families struggle and their children need to come into care. And finally, on the growth section, paragraph 74 onwards takes you through the expansion of Oakfield. So Oakfield is our school, our secondary education provision for children who would otherwise be excluded from other schools and not in an education provision. That provision has expanded significantly following the end of the Secondary Education Inclusion Partnership Agreement, so the SEEPs that used to be in place. So the resource from the authority has been put into providing a much more comprehensive package and support to children via Oakfield. So under that model is not only the resource that's provided, but our responsibilities to transport children to and from school. So the bottom up to paragraph 78 takes you through the rationale for it. And that's the end of the section on growth.
Thank you very much. And I think there's a misalignment between the paragraph numbers between the two. So I think we're all in the right place now. So thank you and apologies for interrupting. I had a hand up from Miss Penderbury, so we'd like to start the questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for this very comprehensive report. I feel like I've learned a lot reading it, let alone anything else. And thank your staff for the work they do. I know it's incredibly challenging and I also assume incredibly rewarding. I do have a few questions, so do forgive me. Item 54, you talk about working with schools with a view to develop enhanced educational provision for children with SEND transitioning into their first year at primary school. And again, you referred to avoiding costly placements at independent schools. Given that there is currently a proposal to lose dedicated provision for children aged 0 to 4 in the Hinckley area at the Memphis Nursery in Burbage, which schools and nurseries are you talking to pick up the slack on this? That's question A. Shall I list them all first and then you answer, or would you like me just to stop? Okay. B, have they stated that they have the room to accommodate all aspects of necessary care, including the ADLs, such as changing facilities, room within the classrooms, parking, additional staff, and so forth? I've also spoken to a couple of teachers, one of whom is an ex-teacher, but they raised some concerns as well. Do they have the ability to train both teachers and support workers? I'm told that in some classrooms, not nursery, but classrooms, up to 2/3 of the children didn't have an EHCP, but had been identified by the Senkos as needing support. However, when they'd come through from specialist nurseries, they were more likely to have that EHCP in place. One from a parent who asked, will Makaton be taught within non-specialist classrooms, as children's communication can be quite difficult verbally? Makaton is taught in the specialist schools en masse. Would that be taught with a £10 spend and training? And would it be taught to all the children, or would they just have a selection using this? What additional financial support will be given, and will this be ongoing? Will it be linked to inflation? How are the schools going to maintain this going forward? Is the plan being extended to special schools for older children? And if so, which schools are at risk? As the government skill white paper on SEND is expected to be released imminently, I believe it's been delayed, hasn't it, from November, and is purported to contain significant changes to the EHCP. Why are we doing this now, not waiting for that to come out? Given that it could also impact on any reports we do, and we may need to restart this whole process, I'd have thought, or am I being naive here? While I note that several references to cost involved to provide dedicated SEND provision, I cannot see within the document the risk assessment for a change of provision. Could we have a copy of that, please? And will it cover aspects of what happens when it breaks down and it's decided that a child does need a dedicated provision? And one final one. I promise I'm going to shut up after that. There was an interesting article last week on the news about numerous parents taking county councils to court who had failed to provide effective SEND provision for their children. And I believe 90% of the cases that were taken to court were won by the parents. Can I ask, has LCC been sued by parents? How much has this cost? And is this included in the risk strategy? Because in my view, and I'm no expert, you guys are the experts, if we lost dedicated SEND provision, wouldn't it be more likely that parents would sue? And if so, what's going to happen? And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try and remember all those. I've written as fast as I can, but if I miss anything out, do come back to me, and we can also let you have some of the answers in writing afterwards, because I don't know some of the detail. But first of all, you asked which schools and which nurseries. So I assume you're talking about the early years provision. We haven't identified which early years providers we would be targeting to either expand as part of the proposals, because we'll need to have further conversations with providers should that be the direction of travel that we ultimately decide to go in. And it'd be wrong of me to start second guessing providers' wishes there. But what we are committed to doing is make sure there is equitable access across the county to early years provision for children with additional needs, which there currently isn't. And we need to create more capacity within our early years teams and services generally with the enhanced childcare offer that the government has rolled out, and this model would allow us to do that. At the same time as also expanding the specialist support that we're able to provide both through our early years service and the training that's also available for early years settings themselves as well. So that'd be both one-to-one support, but also looking more broadly at the offer for the whole system, for the whole provision as well. So it would cater for a much broader range of need, making sure that children don't have to travel long distances, and that their needs can be met in the local community. Because what we do know is that when children's needs are met in their local community, their outcomes are generally better across the board. And we see that particularly with looked after children who tend to gravitate back to their home environment, and the outcomes aren't as good as when we can place them and they're part of their local support network as well. So I hope that's helpful. We're looking to make sure that our local providers can meet a much broader range of need and look at a range of different training packages. Makaton might be one of those. There are also others in terms of making sure there's access to speech and language therapy support much earlier, so we can meet those needs earlier and we can meet the needs of families, because at the moment it's quite restrictive about what support families can access at which particular times, and much of the support is only available during term times. But what we're hearing from families is that they want access all year round, or to flex the type of support they need to expand their hours to meet their own individual circumstances and for the needs of their families as well. I've talked a bit about training, but there will be an extensive training package. There already is a really good support package in terms of training for providers, but we'll be looking to expand that still further, and making sure that we can provide one-to-one support for particular children where they need it, but also working with providers so they can use the additional funding more flexibly to meet their local needs, because it will differ from provider to provider based on the types of children that they've got, the types of needs they're trying to meet, and their experience and expertise that they already have. Additional support, you asked about whether it's linked to inflation. I think that's also one that we often have debate with the government around that. So is the funding allocations linked, and will we see an uplift? And we'd also want to make sure that that's reflected in any increased banding levels that we give out to providers, and not just across early years, but also across the statutory school age and beyond as well. So that's something we would look at particularly. You also asked about whether we're looking to expand to older children. I think the white paper will focus quite heavily on that particular aspect. So what we know, because we're part of the change programme, is that mainstream inclusion is going to be a key developmental area and a key policy area. So we're expecting the government to announce additional funding for that, and they've already announced last week £200 million additional training to support providers, early years, and also schools in terms of meeting those needs of children and young people. I don't know what the white paper is going to say. I don't know whether it's going to be delayed again. You're quite right, it's been delayed some time already. I think because we know that mainstream inclusion is going to be such a core area of policy development, actually our early years proposals do align with that aspiration, and we're making sure that we are looking to develop that particular area. And we've been working both within statutory school age, but also now in the early years to make sure we can cater for a much broader range of need and to use the funding more effectively. It's worth me saying that the proposals are not cost savings. They are looking to reinvest all of the money we currently spend into early years providers, so we can make sure that there is equity provision across the county, because it's not fair for some families either not to have access to that support, or alternatively having to travel a long way to get that support. And we've talked already around the impact and outcomes. For any proposals that finally go forward, there will be a detailed risk assessment on the various issues that we may experience, and that will be developed as part of our proposals should they go forward to Cabinet for a decision. And whichever the decision is there, we would look towards risk assessing that as well. You also asked about taking families to court. I'm not sure whether you meant the tribunal process or whether you meant through alternative the county court and so on. But it's fair to say that there are a number of authorities that are taken through both processes, and we haven't been sued through that particular process, but we do go to a tribunal where we think the needs of children can be met in an alternative way to that which parents believe, and that's something which we work with families to look at the right support in the right place at the right time, and there's a whole piece of work that we've done around that to make sure that we are reducing the need to go through the tribunal process. But sometimes it's the right thing to do for children. So we need to make sure that whatever our decisions and whatever direction we're going in, we have children's needs at the very centre of our decision making.
Thank you. Can I just come back on one point?
Very quickly.
I will very quickly. I've spoken to a number of people leading up to this. The parents are really, really worried about losing that provision, really worried. They're terrified their children are not going to get what they need in a mainstream school. Yes, I understand some children will do better, but some will need that dedicated support. And I understand what you're saying about training, but training a teacher in a school without those additional needs. One teacher said to me she had a class of 30, of which half of them had special needs of one sort or another, but not all of them were allocated. And she'd have one assistant in that classroom to try and deal with all those children. How can we change that? How can we ensure that training is profound, is as good as that would be in a special school? And how can we reassure our residents? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what we'd be certainly wanting to do is to make sure there's high quality training available for all providers. The funding level we are able to give will mean that they can employ one-to-one support where it's needed. For some young people, that will be the right thing to do, but not for everybody. And we have a really robust quality assurance process to make sure the packages and the providers are providing really high quality provision. And what we certainly want to also make sure is to reassure parents that providers will be able to meet those needs in their local community. For some young people, they'll need something slightly different. I completely accept that. But we do make sure that there is the right ratios in our nurseries, which are different from mainstream schools or special schools to cater for the need, and we are adhering to the strict Ofsted guidance around that. And all of those providers will also be subject to regular Ofsted and quality assurance processes, both internally but also through the Department for Education as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. I've got a few. I'll just start with a positive. Really good to see the HCP's issuing targets come down quite considerably. So just really want to say well done for that. Thank you for the whole report. I've just got 3 questions, if I may, Chair. The first one is about the expansion of social care placements, and it's going up and up and up. And I think the text that goes it is that we're seeing a cohort of children. We've been seeing this for many, many years now. I don't think we can just keep saying that year on year. There has to be some breaking point. So I'd be interested to say why that is, that it keeps going up and up, and more people in residential, children in residential, and why we're not stepping that flow. My second one is the concern for staff. There's talk here about, that we need to expand staffing pressures and the caseloads are going up, and this is a really stressful environment to be in. There's a lot of burnout from staff. So I think there's a concern for staff about what we're doing about that, and also the back to work programme that's ongoing at the moment. Is that adding pressure onto these staff as well? So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about that. And then just picking up on Anne's point about the proposals for the closure of specialty nurses. I pick up in here that we're extending the disabled children's and having growth within that department. So if we've got an increase of disabled children in the county, why are we closing specialist provision for them for disabled children? So those two things don't quite correlate in my head. So I'd like some more information about that, please. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and and thank you as well to Damien, who just reminded me there is an item in Marsh's agenda on some of this, so we have a chance to discuss it further then as well. But I'll hand it back over to officers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Taylor. So the numbers of children coming into care have increased, and I do hope that the report outlines some of the reasons for that. The increase in the cost around residential is because twofold really. One is the lack of sufficiency around alternative family-based placements. So as we come in to discuss the plans and growth, that's about how we do everything we possibly can for those children who need to be in our care to have the right foster homes and support foster carers. The issue around increased residential is due to the numbers of foster carers across the country, because we don't just look at our own foster carers. We go, if we believe a child's needs can be met in foster care and we don't have an in-house provision, we do go to the IFA market. So we don't default to residential first and foremost. So there is work around how we can support foster carers. The other key area of work is our Family First Partnership work. So that is looking at how we reset and reform all our services and our work to children and families, with a view and an ambition that we will be able to work differently with families and support those families across the partnerships. This is not just a local authority, this is around our partner agencies as well, to support more families to be able for children to live within their family, if not with their parents, within their family network. So part of those reforms also includes a kinship strategy to how we can strengthen and support kinship, who are people known to that child, a family member, an extended family member who may be able to support that child. The other thing that we're doing, and it is in the savings part of the report, is developing and establishing our own residential homes in our partnership with Bernardo's. So they are how we can, one, ensure the quality of care in those provisions. They are just for our children, they're just for Leicestershire children. They are homes that are established locally, so children are living as part of their community, which is better for all sorts of reasons. But if you're trying to maintain a child within their education, if you're trying to maintain that contact with family, that is far easier to do if a child is living near to in their community. But also, as well as developing those, we're able to have more control over the cost of those homes per child, because we are working with Bernardo's, we're working with a not-for-profit organisation that has a value base very much in line with the values of the local authority. Private providers are making profit and are taking profit, so the costs that they are charging are significantly high. So those three things coming together are things that we're doing to try to work and tackle, get the best outcomes for children, and bring those costs more reasonably, to be more reasonable. But that is within a climate and a reality that is outlined in the report, that children's life experience and lived experiences and the trauma that they've experienced, resulting in some of the behaviour that we then see, are increasing. It's an increasing complex world out there for our children. Question 2, which was about concerns for staff. So we do a lot of work within the this local authority to provide the environment for our workers to feel able and supported to do the very best job. We have a very structured programme around supervision, around training for those staff, how we help manage those workloads, the management oversight that's provided, and the training opportunities that take place to enable alternatively qualified staff who may want to go on and be a social worker to actually train whilst they are working for this authority. So all those things help us manage and ensure that our staff are able to do the very thing we need them to do, which is to be out there focused on seeing children and helping develop and progress those plans for those children, including those children where we want to work to a time where it is safe for them to be at home without our involvement, or it's safe for them to return home if they've been in our care. So I'm confident that we can provide the committee with lots of evidence about the work that we do with our workforce. The back to work policy is not impacting significantly. Our staff, our frontline staff, even through the pandemic, were having to be out there and having to visit and see children in more controlled environments during the pandemic, but those expectations have always been there for our staff. So for our staff within Children and Family Services, it's never been a case where they've been able to work from home all the time and not be out visiting, because the very essence of their work is they're out there working with children and families. But we work with them, we do lots around wellbeing, we have a clear offer around wellbeing that's offered by the local authority, but we within the department provide that critical counselling to our staff who are dealing with the more risky and more difficult areas. So I hope that answers those two questions, and I'll pass to Tim for the education one.
Thank you. So you're quite right to raise the disparity between the two areas. It's worth noting that there are different funding streams. So there's the Disabled Children Service can be funded from council funds, whereas the specialist nurseries are funded from the high needs block, and the council is not allowed to supplement the high needs block spend because of the financial regulations that the DfE have issued. With that in mind, one thing that we're particularly keen to do, given that there is an increase in identified additional needs and send across the system, we need to look at ways to use the existing funding from the high needs block more effectively to meet the needs of more children, given the resources limited. And the proposals do achieve that objective, because we currently fund around 64 term time only full-time places at the specialist nurseries, whereas with the alternative delivery model we can cater for a much broader range of need across the full year in specialist in locality mainstream provision, which is something which parents are very keen on, because it meets their need when they need it across the full calendar year rather than just the academic year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Page.
Look, Chair, just picking up on the SEND nurse replacement discussion, I know we're going to come to this later, but just very quickly, I think there are three principles that I want to address here very quickly, bearing in mind that there's already quite a lot of public discontent about these proposals. There's already one, I think there's a number of things that have been said recently in the media, and I think you'll see that flowing forward further. The principles of these: one, the principle of safeguarding of children is ultimately our greatest responsibility. And for what I've seen from these proposals, I don't believe actually they do safeguard children in greatest need. In fact, if anything, I think they probably appear to increase that risk. I cannot imagine a situation with the diversity of SEND children inside one environment where, with the tensions and the strain on current teaching arrangements in those classes, where you can have a situation where we can cater for absolutely every SEND need in that environment, and not to the detriment of other children who don't actually have those needs either. So I think there's a serious balance issue here about our capability. The second one is doing the right thing, appearing with the appearance of trying to ensure the best outcomes for all children. It feels like we're actually doing the worst possible outcome by lumping them all together when, as I've said, we've got such diverse needs, some with more complex needs than others in that same environment. And I'm really concerned that that actually will lead to poorer outcomes for children at the end of the day. And the third principle is this, of parental choice for parents. What's happened to the parents being able to decide whether they wish their children to go into a dedicated specialist environment or an integrated one with mainstream nurseries. So to me, this looks like a one solution to fit all, a one location to fit all the needs. Parents are unhappy. As I said, 1,000 people have signed a petition already and it's growing fast. I'd like to see us consider an option here where we actually offer both. We offer both the dedicated environment for children with SEND needs and the mainstream environment, and allow parents to make the choice of which environment is best for their kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and hope to have a further discussion. Clearly, safeguarding is everyone's business, and that is our highest objective, to make sure that all children are safe, whether they're in a mainstream setting or a specialist setting, whether that be early years or later on in the statutory school age. And we have very clear procedures, very clear framework that all providers must meet. And that is one of the highest bars that Ofsted look at when they are inspecting. And that's one of the key areas that our own early years team look at. So we are absolutely committed to safeguarding all children, because you're quite right, that's our core role and responsibility. What I would say is that education protects, and when children and young people aren't able to attend school, they are unsafe because they're unseen. And what we've got at the moment is a scenario where some children, some early years children, cannot attend a setting because there isn't provision in the local area and they haven't got the support in that setting because the funding isn't adequate. These proposals address that particular issue so that we can make sure we're able to meet those needs in the local community and also protect their safeguarding needs as well. You talk about the range of specialist needs. Every school has a different range of special needs. Every classroom has to meet a broad range of needs. And our own special schools, our area-based special schools, do cater for a very broad range of needs. And we're well used to doing that within our provision. And we'd look to do the same with these proposals as well. We are also expanding our specialist sector with a new area-based special school in the south of the county, which will again offer support and guidance to some of those providers as well. You talk about parental choice. Without being pedantic, all of the education guidance and policies talk about parental preference. We all want to be able to choose where we go to, but it is only a preference, and parents are able to express a preference. And we're very keen to expand, and for as many parents as we're able to can get their school of preference. And our admissions has been very successful over a number of years to make sure that children can go to the preferred education setting, whether that be early years or later years. And you then go on to talk about the one location. I would argue that the current model we've got is limiting just to 4 locations in the county, and we are looking to make sure that children and people with additional needs can be supported across the county in every provision as is necessary. So we are trying to look at all of those areas and make sure that we are providing high quality early years provision across the calendar year, not just based on term time only, as is currently the case.
Thank you very much. I will give you an opportunity if you want any supplementary, but I just want to remind members that this is a real hot topic, as you mentioned. There's a lot of concern and about this issue. We will come back to this in March, and the MTFS is the focus of this. And I'm conscious that we've all got teas and families to go home to. So I do want to get us to that point as well in this meeting. So if we can just focus on the MTFS and that delivery for this meeting, we'll have an opportunity in subsequent ones to really delve into this in more detail later. But do you have a supplementary, Mr. Page, or were you happy? Thank you very much. So if there are no further member questions on that part, I will move us into the second part of the MTFS. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair and members. So paragraph 79 onwards outlines the savings that we're on target to make across the service and for the duration of the MTFS. The table that's referenced under paragraph 80 takes you through the detail of each of those areas that I'll now come on to describe in some detail. So the first area of saving, it centres around our residential redesign. And the creation of a number of homes that I've outlined already in a partnership with Bernardo's. So that's on target this year, 26-27, to make a savings of 0.75 million, rising to 1.5 million by 28-29. And the ambition of the innovation partnership was to create 8 homes providing 23 child placements, serving a wide range of different types of need. 7 of those 8 homes are now open and operational and children living in them, and actually seeing some success with the children that are placed and living there. An 8th home is ready to be opened. We are just awaiting the feedback from Ofsted for them to give us a date for them to go and register that provision, but that's continually being chased so that we can get that home up and operational. Short Breaks residential home opened in December. It says to be opened. It opened in December so that we can provide valuable support to those children living at home for most of the time who have very complex disability and complex needs. And this is about providing a short break that is a benefit to that young person and child, but also a benefit to their carers and family. The second area of savings is around the social care workforce strategy. So this is a recruitment and retention strategy that we have in place with estimated savings of 0.25 million for 26-27, increasing to 0.65 million by 27-28. So as part of the Defining Children's Services for the Future, we completed a comprehensive review of the workforce social care workforce strategy. We looked at how we attract experienced staff to our authority. We have seen success in attracting newly qualified staff. We have seen success in reducing the turnover of staff with staff leaving the authority, but we have yet to encourage and see the number of experienced social workers that we would want to move over to Leicestershire to close that gap even further around our vacancies. One of the key parts of the national reforms was regulations that were published around the use of agency staff, and those regulations have supported local authorities to have a greater control over agency usage in the movement of agency staff. We have a memorandum of understanding in the East Midlands, which means that a member of staff choosing to go from permanent employment with us, for example, couldn't go and practice as an agency staff with any of our colleagues across the East Midlands. We have that agreement across, so we're not encouraging people to go to agency. It's seen a stronger hold over the fees that agency staff can charge, although that is an area of further focused work. And it's also seen that the regulations have asked that somebody cannot go and be an agency social worker unless they've worked in a local authority permanent employment for 3 years. So actually what it's done is it's stopped people very early in their social work careers jumping to go and work in agency. So those things combined are helping us see some improvement across the use of agency staff and our recruitment and retention. Reduction, the third area is reducing care costs through the growth of internal family-based placements. So that's based on increasing our internal foster homes to strengthen local capacity. It's about making sure that we utilise those internal foster carers in the best possible way, don't have people with vacancies or not able to take a child for any reason. And it's about us being focused and continuing to focus our successful work around people becoming special guardians for children, which means that they are no longer in our care. They can still be supported both financially and practically, but it's not the same level. It doesn't have to, it doesn't require all the statutory requirements that are there for a child in care. And the most important thing is it gives that child legal stability and security with their carers. So we've seen lots of success with that for some children, and that's a continued area of focus. We've also, sorry, what I should have mentioned when I talked about the residential homes is that as part of our smarter commissioning, we also have looked at different types of contracts with providers in Leicestershire. So they will provide more cost-effective homes local to our children. So the fourth part is around the smarter commissioning. So this is around how we do things better, smarter. We've seen the smarter commissioning make and have the ability to make quite significant savings by using the power of that smarter commissioning to drive down some of the costs of supported living accommodation, costs to our older accommodation to our older children who are leaving care, the cost to the unaccompanied asylum seeking care leavers as examples, and by the commissioning of not only the partnership with Bernardo's but with other providers, we're seeing this as an area that can really get us more value for money, whilst ensuring importantly that children's needs are met and children are kept safe in their homes. So the savings work streams can be broken down. Sorry, paragraph 96 is the savings work streams can be broken down into 3 main different strands. Strand 1 is to deliver 5.47 million of savings, which is through to minimise and maximise the impact of market costs for children's placement. So this is around getting the best possible value for those placements and support packages. Strand 2, which is to deliver 0.955 million of saving, is how we review packages. So for some children and young people, we don't only have the fee cost of that home, there is an additionality cost around certain things that are provided to those young people. It may be additional staffing, it may be additionality through waking nights. It depends on the particular needs of those youngsters. Or for an older young person, it might be about somebody going into that supported accommodation to provide more one-to-one support. Our rigour of how we review those to make sure that children's needs are assessed, we're only providing an assessed need, means that we are able to generate some savings from that area. And strand 3 will be achieved through developing a wide range of other accommodation and support options. So we ensure that accommodation support models meet demand and need. So in terms of work being undertaken today in paragraph 97 and the successes achieved, significant progress has been made in reducing the unit cost of supported accommodation placements through a series of targeted actions. They include comprehensive reviews of all 16 plus supported accommodation packages and residential placements, being proactive in our commissioning and negotiation with providers to ensure not only that we don't have over provisioning, but we don't have over costs, and the introduction of a really robust quality assurance framework that looks over the commissioning process. We've also bought and established in use a fair pricing tool that's called Care Cubed. So this has strengthened brokerage in their debates and negotiations with private providers about the price that we pay. So our more agile approach to market development, block contracting, mini tenders, going out to the market, meeting with providers, talking about the needs of our children, looking proactively at those children who are ready to step down from residential care, working with private providers and our own internal resources to look at the best options and possibilities of those children being provided with a family-based placement are helping towards achieving those savings. And then finally, there's a departmental service efficiency review. So this initiative was introduced as a response to the financial pressures across service areas. The management team has led a comprehensive review of any of our non-statutory services. We regularly and robustly look at all vacancies. We monitor those vacancies through our department directors meeting. We ensure that if possible, we can manage the recruitment to those posts. So all of that work and the work around non-staff expenditure has enabled us to create and identify 0.63 million of savings for 26-27. And then there are savings under development. So to help bridge the gap and generate further savings, members will be aware of the council strategy to complete a council-wide efficiency review and work with our partners in Newton to develop that. So the department is part of that work. And the key elements of that work are to include how we can review all council activities to get the best value for money, how we can assess existing MTFS projects to make sure we're getting the right savings and we're targeted upon the work we need to undertake, ensuring that our transformation strategy is ambitious, and reviewing the county council's approach to delivering change. So paragraph 108 outlines for the committee the areas of focus as part of that efficiency review for the Children and Families Department. And that is enabling more children and families to live together and be safe outside of care through early intervention and prevention, enabling those children that need to be in our care to be in a family-based environment through increasing foster care capacity, preventing carer breakdown, which often sees children moving from family-based placements to residential care. And I've outlined earlier for the committee, not only is that not good for children, it's extremely expensive. And ensuring where residential provision does need to be used, not only does it meet the needs of those children and young people, but it's the most cost-effective most cost-effective resource. Enabling more children where it's safe for them to do so, return home from care, so leave care and go back to their family environment if it's safe for them to do so. And then finally, the final strand is getting a better value from commissioned market through our strategic commissioning. So I hope that I'll pause there to take any comments around the savings. And then for the final part of the report, which is about the dedicated schools grant, Tim will take members through it, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious, Mr. Puggs, I did give you a chance last time. Is there anything you want to mention against this one? Are you happy?
There's nothing to add at this point, Chair. Thank you.
No, thank you. Members, do we have any questions or comments? Just maybe one or two from me. And I think I congratulate you again for going back and seeing where you can almost get blood from a stone, it seems. It seems there's very limited scope for change. We've heard that before from members here about how we've been through this process time and time again. And there's getting very little now to save, essentially. I have a question about recruitment, because obviously that was one of the key areas for savings. And I'm assuming children and families and social care in general have the same recruiting problems as other public bodies, that there aren't enough good qualified people out there and they can pick and choose where they go to, and potentially private as well. How feasible do you think it is to get those high quality applicants into these positions when we're limited in what we can offer them, I'm guessing, in wages or that sort of thing compared to private? And that was my first question. And my second one, if I can, is just on that sort of departmental goals at the end. I haven't seen previous iterations of this in previous years gone by, but I would imagine they're pretty similar, because it's about stepping back as a county council and allowing others to fill that gap, because obviously it is more cost effective. We're not actively, I guess, the providers in that point. But how different are these to previous years would be my question. And if they are similar, what hasn't worked before? So they're my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to recruitment, which for the purposes of this report is really the recruitment of qualified and experienced social workers, there's an added challenge of it's not just about making Leicestershire the right place and the sort of destination of choice. There is a limited number nationally of social workers. So it's not simply that they're out there and we've got to get them through our doors. We obviously do want to get them through our doors, but there's an added complication that there aren't enough qualified social workers, particularly staying in frontline practice, and that practice that's around safeguarding of children. And they, unsurprisingly, are the areas of our department where we struggle and have greatest issues around recruiting staff. So our front door and our family safeguarding teams. We've done a number of things to reduce that number over time, and some of those things are a long-term strategy that we're starting to see the benefit of, but will take time. And that's about our programme to train our own social workers. So we support every year about 7 alternatively qualified staff who apply for and are successful on the apprenticeship route. So each year now, we had 3 years when we started that of not getting any, waiting for somebody to come through. Each year now, we have 7 people come in. And actually, probably not surprisingly, they are individuals that have already got a track record with us. They already know the authority. They already have experience of the types of work that we do and the pressure. And they, unsurprisingly, are the people that tend to stay with us and stick with us when they're qualified. So that is a really, really positive route. This year, we are also looking at the postgraduate route for the apprenticeship. So that is an added a strengthening of that route. We are supporting a number of people who are returning to social work. So we do advertising. We're part of a national scheme to get people qualified social workers who've been out of social work for whatever reason for a period of time back into work, and we've seen some success there. We recruited 2 years ago a number of international social workers who came over to this country and continue to work with us and provide a service. They've grown, they've been developed, they've been supported, and are valued members of our social work staff. The other key area, I think, to add to all that recruitment is that the social work reforms are letting us and driving us and directing us to look at the skill mix of our workforce, working with children and families, and looking at alternatively experienced and qualified people who can work alongside social workers and who collectively are the best people to work with our children and families. And committee members will be aware that we've presented previously the success of our family help model, which has been about bringing social workers and alternatively qualified and experienced staff together to provide a strong offer to children and families. The social work reforms gives us the opportunity, which we are taking and looking at in our design of the service for the future, on how we build on that. So we are confident that the tasks we need social workers and qualified social workers to do, we can get them to concentrate on that, and the tasks that actually could be as well or better supported by a different skill mix, we're supporting those children. So that's I guess a change, a shift that we have built over a number of years that we are building upon with our social work reforms. So that will be the goal there, and that will be the goal to actually help us bring in line some of the issues that are outlined. But having said all of that, I wouldn't want us to think it's an easy. This is a really, really challenging area of work. It's a challenging area for somebody to work in. We are fortunate to have a very committed and passionate workforce who work tirelessly for children. It comes with risks to people, so we need to do everything we can to support in the ways that I hope I've identified before. And in relation to the areas that are identified as part of the efficiency, you're right, because of all the work we've done over the last few years around defining children's services, our methodology and the way we look and target where our areas are and how we work differently is a very sophisticated model. So actually the areas that Newton have identified for children and family services are the areas we'd identified and we're working on. That is positive because it means we know ourselves well and we know the areas to focus on. The challenge for us and our challenge back to Newton is what additionality is their involvement going to give us in children and family services. That additionality will be around a resource and a skill set that will make us look at whether we can get some of these in place sooner than we'd anticipated, or that some of the benefits that come out of this way of working, whether we can increase those benefits. But they are areas that we'd identified.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Taylor.
I think I should have asked this question under the last section, but if I may just come back to it very quickly. Just about the cost of transport to the Oakfield school. It's put on there that it will be a service pressure to the council's general budget, and I would have thought that sits under environment and transport. If you can just clarify, because that says it needs to be factored into the financial planning. So is it factored into the environment and transport budget? If you could just clarify that for me. My second question is about the savings as well, just picking up on your point, Chair. There's hardly anything on there savings identified. We kind of like appears that we're cut to the bone, and I just wonder where else we've got to go, and it'd be good to hear from the lead member what plans he has in place about where we're going to find these efficiency, or if we're now starting to look for service cuts and where we might be looking for service cuts to get within budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If I pick up the transport issue first, you're quite right. The DSG is not allowed to fund transport, so it is a core council cost. What we're doing is flagging it in both directorates because clearly it's a all council cost. Where it actually sits, I think, is a moot point, and we're just making sure that both committee groups are aware that it is a pressure as a result of the increasing demand that we're experiencing.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Tell. I think, as has been mentioned, we are working with Newton, so we are starting to find some areas where we'd be able to do efficiency savings. I think the most important thing for me to say to the committee is my priority as lead members to ensure that we do everything that is possible to ensure that there are no service cuts to any of the services that we offer. As more information comes to light into areas where we can start to make efficiency savings, I'll make sure that that's communicated with the committee. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, we can move on to the next part of the NTFS. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll move on to the dedicated schools grant, which, as colleagues will know, is split into 4 blocks, and our estimated figure going forward is 841.5 million. We won't know the final amount allocated until further into this year when we get the final allocations from the Department for Education. So the first block is the schools block, which is estimated to be 583.9 million. And the school funding continues to be delivered through the national funding formula. No structural changes to the national funding formula are expected or demonstrated for 2026-27, although the DFE has rolled up a number of separate grants into the allocation and the national funding formula. Local authorities are required to move 10% closer to the national funding formula compared to 25-26, unless they already fully mirror the national funding formula. LAs must also operate the minimum funding guarantee, ensuring that no school receives a reduction on its per pupil funding compared to the 25-26 financial year. And this has meant that Leicestershire has to seek permission to continue to fund rental costs in some small schools from the Department for Education. But with those exceptions noted, assuming approval from the department is received, the Leicestershire funding formula fully reflects the national funding formula. The schools block allocation reflects also an increase of 4% based on the updated pupil census, but will be impacted by changes in pupil characteristics, things like deprivation and additional needs, and some of those individual items are unknown at this point. So we'll hence why some of the figures are estimates at this stage. But what we do know is the minimum per pupil levels are set at £5,115 for primary schools and £6,640 for secondary schools. The second block is central services, which is 4.81 million, and that funds are related or a number of school related expenses, things like retirement costs, copyright licenses, and a contribution towards admissions and so on. Early years, 128.6 million, and that funds 30 hours for eligible working parents for children aged 9 months to 2 years, extended from 15 hours from September. 15 hours for 2-year-olds for families requiring additional support, and that was formerly the disadvantaged 2-year-old stream. And then we've got the universal offer of 15 hours for 3-year-olds and older. And then we've got additional 15 hours for extended entitlement for working parents for 3 and 4-year-olds as well. The high needs budget we estimate will be 124.1 million, and that funds and supports placements and for children and young people with additional needs. Our allocation for 25-26 was significantly below projected spending levels. At the end of the current financial year, we estimate we'll have a accumulated high needs deficit of 64.4 million, and that's projected to rise to 210.5 million by the end of 25-26. If future demand remains similar to the current financial year, the DSG deficit could rise to around 460 million by March 2030, which is rather eye-watering. The government has announced that from 28-29 they will take over responsibility for the DSG send costs. However, they haven't specified yet how that will be achieved and also how that will be funded as well. We may hear some more within the white paper next month. This means that local authorities will be left not to build up further deficits from 28-29, but what we don't know is how the current deficits will be dealt with and whether that be through capital borrowing and paid back through revenue spend or otherwise at this moment in time. But the DSG deficits are expected to reach £14 billion nationally by 28-29, so that will be carried on local authority balance sheets. Mrs. Taylor, thank you for recognising the send improvements. I'm really pleased that over the last year, the average time for an EHCP to be issued has reduced from 56 weeks, and we're now within statutory timeframes of 20 weeks, which is really significant. And the entirety of the backlog has also been cleared as well. Just moving on to some of the capital investment, we're looking to invest £49.1 million over the next 4 years, and that's £28.4 million next year, and that's partially funded, and the rest of the programme is funded through basic need from the DFE and Section 106 contributions. I'll probably leave it there, Chair, but I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, I was just trying to clarify where I was on my list. Are there any questions from members? Yes, Mrs. Taylor.
Not such a question as a comment. I mean, the figures you're quoting for the overspend on the high needs blocks just this year is huge, isn't it? And to add to what we're adding this year is just, I just can't understand how these figures are getting to this level. I know there's not much you can do about it, but I just need to put on record that it's just exploded this year. And, you know, we can't carry on like this. It'll just bankrupt the council. And I just hope that when further guidance comes out for government, it does actually pinpoint some actual action with this rather than just letting this drift and drift and drift. So, yeah, not such a question, but just put on record that my absolute shock about where we are this year.
Yes, Mr. Piper.
Sorry, mine's not a question either. It's an apology. I'm sorry about the phone. My phone was on silent, but the exceptions for family for emergency calls came through. So my apologies to you, sir.
You're more than okay. Are there any other member questions? I think we've actually covered the whole of our list. I think you did the capital, just sneaked in at the end there. So I want to thank you so much. That's an incredible amount of information, a level of detail, and the way you've answered questions. I think we can all be really proud of the officer's work on this. Also, Mr. Pugsley as well for answering the questions you did. Yes, I'll echo. Oh, sorry, Ms. Taylor.
Sorry, I didn't realise we brought the end of the list. I just have one more question on the capital programme, if that's possible. Yeah, just about are there any plans to expand the partnership with Bernardo's, the Innovation Partnership? Are you looking to expand that at all? Is there any other match funding available at all? What's the plans for that?
We are always open, including working with Bernardo's, to see how we could expand that partnership. What we wanted to do was see how we got the homes that we'd already agreed with them open and established. So we wanted to get those up and running. But we also don't want to just go down one route, which is why we're looking at other partners. So we've got not a partnership, but we've got an agreement with Keys that provide a home, but a home for our children. So we're trying to create a mixed economy so that we're not over reliant just on one key way of achieving what we need to achieve for our children. But we are always open, and if there is further funding, we'll be at the front of the queue.
Mr. Charlesworth.
Just to echo that point from Mrs. Taylor, I mean, partnership with Bernardo's is a good way forward. If you find other partners like that, I'll be chuffed, because there's too much unregistered, unregulated stuff going on now, which is costing an arm and a leg. And I'll say it in public, there are too many chances out there taking advantage of us. And I'm pretty fed up with that. I'm sure we all are. And we need a proper system in place.
Thank you so much. And just to finish, again, thank you. But also, I echo the comments from Councillor Taylor that this is unsustainable as we go forward. That level of gathering debt is just it is eye-watering, and it's sad, because ultimately the only people that will suffer are the people who access this service and who are actually in most need, because services will have to be cut inevitably or something like that. So thank you, but I think it's really sobering and it's a good reminder to remember why we are here making a difference. So we'll move on now to item 9, which is the draft Children and Family Services Departmental Plan 26 to 29. This is on page 53 to 58 of your packs. Sharon, I believe you are presenting this report as well, so I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
I am, Chair, thank you, and members. And just before I start, I want to apologise that there is a typing error in paragraph 2 that should say 2029, not 2026. So the purpose of the report is to present to the committee the draft Children and Family Service Plan for 26-29. A copy of that plan has been attached to papers, and the following any comments from this committee and any amendments that come from here, the plan will be presented to Cabinet on the 3rd of February. So this is a revised plan. We've had a Children and Family Services plan, departmental plan previously. We've revised the plan by taking account of what children and families have told us about the service, told us about the positive things, linked in with obviously what our statutory duties and requirements are. But I hope you'll agree that we've made a plan on, not on a page, it's a plan on 2 pages, but we've made something that I think is both ambitious, clear about our priorities, clear about it's based on what children and young people and families have told us, and it's something that we hope will be readable for anybody that wants to see it and wants to understand the work of the service. So the plan looks at a key vision. It has 3 ambitions, and then it has 9 priorities for how we will meet and manage and measure our success and ourselves. So those priorities are around helping supporting children and young people to build strong foundations. That's both in a learning capacity, but also within their communities and homes. Supporting children to be safe and belong, so being safe, free from harm, looking at safeguarding for children, but also creating that sense of belonging, both belonging in education as outlined in a previous report, but also belonging to the family and the people that care for them. And thirdly, to support children and young people to enjoy and achieve and become the community citizens that we hope and aspire for them to be able to grow into. So consultation in paragraph 6 outlines that the plan has been developed from feedback with children and families. It's been work has been done with some of the key established groups that support our children, young people and families voice. And as said earlier, pending any comments from scrutiny and any amendments from those comments, we will present this to Cabinet at the beginning of February. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pugsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll keep it rather brief. This draft policy shows a clear and compelling vision of how we'll support the children in Leicestershire over the next few years, and for that reason, I commend it to the committee today. I'd also like to just take the moment to thank the officers, not just for the work that's gone into shaping the policy, but also for the extensive engagement that they've had with children, young people and families to ensure that when this plan was drafted, that it's founded and rooted in what's important to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any member comments, questions? It's a race. Mr. Charlesworth, there you go.
Thank you. Just a quick one under paragraph 8. Have all those partners bought into this and committed to it?
Yes, that's sorry.
Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, just obviously this is an overarching strategy, which is good to see and replaces the previous one that was in place. But just information about the action plan and where that will go and when it will come to scrutiny for us to see how you're doing against the strategy.
Yeah, the action plan is near completion and can come to scrutiny at any time. If that would be useful for it to come in 6 months, so you can hold us to account on where we are with those actions, but happy to be guided by this committee.
Thank you very much. And I think when we spoke earlier, I think 6 months felt about right. Is that okay with you, Ms. Taylor? Perfect. So I think we're going to try and arrange that sort of September time for it to come back. I think this is a fabulous actual plan. And when you read through it, I think the thing that I really enjoy is the fact there are real voices weave through it. And I think that's really important. And I think as we move forward in scrutiny, all scrutinies actually, I think the more we can hear from real people who have experienced our service, the better we are going to be able to scrutinise the decisions being made. So I really enjoy things like this coming forward because you actually get a bit of an experience of how people are interacting with how we do things. So no, thank you again for the hard work presenting it today. If there's no further questions, we can move on to item 10. Thank you very much. So item 10 is the School Places Strategy 26 to 31. This is on pages 59 to 134 of your agenda packs. Tim, I believe you're going to present this along with Renata Chantra, Head of Strategy, Education Sufficiency, and you'll both present the report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to inform the committee of the draft school places strategy for 2026 to 31 and how the council will ensure that there are sufficient high quality school places available in Leicestershire. Since the publication of the council's previous strategy, there have been really quite significant shifts in the education landscape which have shaped the draft school places strategy before you today. Reductions in birth rates across the county after a period of really quite significant increases in births and in migrations has led to an increase in the need for secondary school places as that bulge now tips over into the secondary sector from the primary. The impact on primary school occupancy has been really quite inconsistent. Some schools in popular areas remain oversubscribed, whereas others, small rural primary schools typically, are significantly below their capacity. But in order to meet expected growth, major housing development is proposed in all districts of the county, and this is expected to increase the pupil population by over 26,000 children and people over the next 10 years, which again is really quite significant and will see us putting in place around 45 new schools across the county. The draft strategy, though, provides the framework on which the council will ensure there are sufficient high quality places in the right area at the right time and the overall sustainability of the entire school system across the county. And it does also provide the framework for our school reorganisation process, which we'll need to look at to make sure that all areas of the county are sustainable. Because if you have one area where there are insufficient children and young people attending school, it does cause an issue with quality and has a knock-on effect to the rest of the system as well. So it provides that broad framework and also looks at the detail in each of the school planning areas, which members are able to access online. And it shows you what the projected forecasts are over the next 5 to 10 years as well. And we'll also be updating a further guidance around the developments that we're expecting to come forward as well, although the time frame is quite difficult to judge on occasions because of the local nuances and planning obligations as well. But really happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Ms. Pugsley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start by thanking the officers for the depth of work that's gone into underpinning the strategy. I think it goes without saying that ensuring every child has access to a suitable local school place is one of the council's most fundamental responsibilities. And this strategy demonstrates clearly and with an evidence-based approach that they will be able to meet both the mainstream and the specialist need, whilst recognising also the significant challenges posed, which have just been mentioned as well, such as factors like housing growth, market pressures and rising costs.
Much. Mr. Page.
Tim, you'll remember that I've asked you several questions before about Section 106 monies. And I'm just wondering whether there's two things to this, whether we could look to somehow use Section 106 money to send places, send schools, dedicated schools and dedicated places, and whether there are conversations that are being had as we look at the strategic development in that space and obviously the growth patterns that are associated And the second question to this is, I'm still trying to understand how you plan strategically for growth and how those things align to building development applications. Because I just, what comes first? Is it the proposal from the developer in some respects that they're going to bribe us with a brand new school, as they tell us, and they'll provide everything, both a primary school, a secondary school? I've heard it all. Or is it you saying we have a need and a demand based upon a regional growth within the county, and therefore any applications need to satisfy that demand? Could you just explain that, please?
So if I start with the second question first, so you're quite right. It's a tricky balance. What we would always do though is we look at the live births across the county and we map those within our school planning areas, so we know what the expected demand will be in primaries over the next 5 years. But in secondary it's easier because you can do it over a 10-year period because those children are already in the system. We also look at what the GP registrations are and the inward migration. So that's the baseline that we operate on. Then we overlay on top of that any local plans that are being submitted right at the very early stages, so we can start projecting forward what the implications of those planning decisions might be. And then from that, we will make requests from developers in order to expand provision. You're quite right, developers are always very keen on new shiny schools because that sells houses from their perspective. What I'm keen to do though is to make sure we don't destabilise any planning area across the county. So where we know that there is adequate demand for a new school, that may not be the right decision. It might be much better for us to expand at the current system, because otherwise we start losing places across the system and those schools struggle in terms of the quality and attracting children and young people. I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of historical Section 106 agreements that have been drawn up which don't reflect, first of all, the increased costs of construction, and secondly, don't allow us the flexibility to move the money around when need changes, because it does change over a period, because a local plan could take 10 to 15 years to come into fruition. In fact, where I've lived, I've been waiting for a field to be built on for 20 years, and it's finally just started being built on, and we knew about it 20 years ago. So the pigs have been displaced and now that's going forward. But what we need to spend that money on has changed because of the demand of the demographics in the area. So you need that flexibility. So the new local planning obligations policy will allow us that flexibility, which is we're currently looking at implementing, so that we can make sure that the Section 106 obligations take account of inflationary costs that are happening through the system, but also allows us to reflect some of the changing demographics and need. And that comes on to your point about SEND, because sometimes we want to use that money more flexibly for SEND places. And what we're also asking, though, through that local obligations policy, is to make sure that SEND is part of the core construction of any new mainstream school, so that there is SEND provision attached. So it could be a classroom or a quiet space for children and young people with SEND as well. So I think really pertinent questions, and they're spot on, and that's what we're very minded to do as we move forward across those developments in the county.
Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Mr. Page preempted me on some of it. When we're talking about new developments and that, I mean, you are talking about a moving target in trying to plan where new school places are going to be and retiring perhaps old school places. But the question I was going to ask, and I think you've answered it again, is what's the difference between an idea of a plan of a new housing estate? How long does that take, and how long then does it take to build a new school there? And if the developer's doing it, then presumably they're doing it at the same time. The other comment I'd like to make is I always smile when people mention 106 money. 106 money seems to be considered to be free money that's grown on trees, and everybody's after it, and it doesn't go that far. Thank you.
No, thank you. Again, some really pertinent questions. how long's a piece of string, I suppose, in some ways. Different developments take different lengths of times to come into fruition. The build out rates vary considerably. What you often find, and you're quite right, is that we have a projection from the builder around when they expect to deliver the trigger point for the 106 funding. But sometimes the national environment, the economy contracts, and so they pull back on the building schedule and they will stop building just before the trigger point. So what we tend to do is create enough flexibility in the system to take account of those particular nuances. And as part of the place planning strategy, we have outlined the minimum requirements we expect, but also what we look for in terms of when we do build new schools. So I would never look towards building a primary school that's less than 2 forms of entry, because they just aren't viable in the current funding environment. We could build, for example, a 1 form entry initially, but then you build the 2nd form entry later on, but you make sure the core elements, the kitchens, the corridors, the classrooms you've got are adequate to expand as you need to. Similarly at secondary, I would look towards 900 places being the minimum. We've got 1 or 2 around the county which are smaller than that, but actually we will work with developers to build those up so they become more sustainable over time. But you've got to create that flexibility and make sure you don't introduce the new places too quickly to destabilise the rest of the system. So, for example, we would never open a primary school, I hope this is the case, never open a primary school all at once. We would do it gradually, so you would do the intake from the bottom up. Or you may say that we've got a shortfall in year 5, so but you introduce it in a phased approach so that you're not destabilising the rest of the school system in that particular area.
And do you do crystal ball reading on site?
Yes, it's very cheap.
Thank you, Mr. Charlesworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's what you said in answer to Mr. Page that concerns me. I mean, we've got the 2nd phase of the direction for growth in Wigston now, so we're already into the thousands of houses. The school, which was a 230 place proposal as part of the 106, is now put on hold until 2029. What you're saying is that things may have changed so much by then that the predication it was made on will have disappeared and it won't ever be built. I mean, schools in the area are now nearly at capacity anyway. But what you're saying is the school, would, as it's stated now, would be too small. And you can't use the 106 money for anything else, can you?
In some of our more recent 106 agreements, there is more flexibility built in, so we can use them for different purposes within the education arena. What we know is that there will be demand, but it's just about when we need to increase that capacity in a given school planning area. Primary, particularly with the new developments, will pick up. Secondary will see a shortfall quite significantly by 28, 29, but will expand the capacity as we need it. So, for example, we know that by 28, 29, there'll be 47,000 secondary places, but we'll actually need nearly 50,000. So we're looking to make sure there are plans being brought forward at the right time. And we review the forecasts on an annual basis, sometimes more frequently if things do change, and we adapt our strategy accordingly. So there will be adequate places, but we just make sure we're doing it in a responsible way in consultation with the local providers as well. So I'm not concerned at all around the build out rates because we do respond accordingly.
Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you. I'm looking at the opposite end about school closures. So you've obviously just mentioned the numbers that you need to make a school sustainable. We have lots of little rural village schools that are struggling at the moment to be financially viable and sustainable. So are there any school closures planned for the next financial year coming up? And I suppose that then adds to the question that those children that live in those rural villages, you'll then have to transport them to another school. So you're then adding to the transport budget from ENT. So I suppose, how do we square that circle?
Yeah, it's a real dilemma. So what we're doing is we're setting up a school reorganisation project, which will operate over the next 3 years. So we're just starting to recruit to that team at the moment. And we are risk assessing the entire school system. We're starting with some of those small rural schools we are particularly concerned about. because we know without action over the next 3 to 5 years, they will grow deficits totaling 45 or 50 million pounds. So we need to take action, and we'll need to remove the equivalent of around 13 schools from the school system generally. We haven't yet identified which schools they are, because we need to have discussions with those local areas to look at any particular solutions. So solutions could be not school closure. It could be that you're amalgamating, you're expanding, or you're bringing together some infants and juniors, or you're looking to broker deals with multi-academy trusts to make them more sustainable. So we'll be bringing forward plans over the next year, looking at how we're going to address those deficit areas. But there are no current plans to close a particular school or any particular group of schools, but we are looking and risk assessing any discussions with various schools around their sustainability.
Can I just come back to you? I think it'd be useful if that work comes back here, because I think there'll be considerable public interest, and specifically if there are schools earmarked for closure, that those local members are informed so they can support their communities as well. So I think communication will be key around this. So I'd be appreciative if you could add this onto our list of work, please.
Yeah, you read me notes. I think it's vitally important actually, because I represent an area which I guess is sort of half urban, half rural, and actually the rural schools add so much vibrancy and life to their villages, and without them, you sort of decimate the heart of them. So I'm really concerned it has to come back. And not just that, actually, it's more the overarching strategy. I have a problem with one of the lines where it says rural areas aren't going to be quite as impacted as urban ones. I don't think that's true. We're seeing development in all areas now, whether you have a small village, a large town, they're everywhere. So I do have a problem with that line. I think maybe, before it gets published and things, it might have to be reviewed, because I think that doesn't reflect current planning policy. They're in every area. I do have a question just before we move on. And it's just to do with the cliff edge. I think I can see, and it's in that secondary school education. We're just fine at the moment, moving into next year, just fine, but we need to find 2,000 places within the next 2 years. That isn't a quick fix. And we've just heard that any significant building takes years of planning, years of finding funds, pulling sources together. This isn't 1 or 2 classes in each school. This is a significant amount of children and young adults that need placement. So 2,000. I would love to know maybe some of the mitigation that's going into finding those 2,000 places within the next 2 years, not 2,000.
Yes, so we can bring those back, or we can circulate them separately, but there are a range of different plans that we've got in place to mitigate that. Some of those schools were able to expand quite happily without additional capital builds. Some have already got capital builds which are coming online, and others will require brand new ones, which is why I'm really pleased that the council has agreed to fund some additional capital spend during the next financial year to enable us to meet our obligations right through the MTFS period.
If you can circle those, I think it will affect schools in all of our areas. So if you can circle those, it'd be great to know. Thank you. If there's no further questions, we can move on. Wicked. Thank you very much. So this is item 11. It's our final item of the day. And this is the Q2 25-26 performance report. And it can be found on pages 135 to 146. Sharon, you're going to introduce this one, I think, with Tim. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as you've outlined, this is a regular report that comes to the committee. So it's the Q2 performance report for 25-26. The first part of the report, as always, outlines the measures and where we sit on those that are reported, where we're nationally benchmarked. So if I take you through the children's social care and anything for targeted family help and youth and justice, and then Tim will take you through the early years and education. So paragraph 8 down to 15, I'm pleased to say, shows an improvement or a continually high performance against some of the indicators. The percentage of children subject to a second or subsequent child protection plan, the lower the percentage, the better there. We work towards 22% being healthy. So as you can see, we're very we're achieving higher than that percentage. Re-referrals to children's social care, is a positive percentage, and improvements around completion of assessments, that's social work assessments in 45 days. And as always, our performance around care leavers, so those in suitable accommodation, those that are in education, employment and training, and those who are in contact with the service, we perform really strongly. The service does a fabulous job with those areas, those young people. There has been a slight decrease in the number of children in care who've had a dental check in the preceding 12 months. That is a figure that is closely monitored, and the rationale for and reason for that. Sometimes it's our older young people who we struggle to encourage to go to the dentist, and sometimes that's been about access to a dentist, although that second area is much improving. So I think that takes members through that area. In relation to youth justice, those statistics are regularly reported to the Youth and Justice report. So the on paragraph 21, the key performance for the committee today is the number of first-time entrants to the criminal justice system was 17. That's an unchanged figure. Obviously we wouldn't want any child to be in contact with youth and justice in the criminal system, but that number is maintained as a relatively low number, although we would want it to be naught, obviously. So I think that takes the committee through the key performance that's linked to targeted family help, youth and justice and social care. And I'll pass on to Tim to take you through early years and education, and then happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you, Sharon. So just very briefly, you can see the trajectory for all the indicators on the grid. The two I wanted to just raise in early years are the eligible 2-year-old take-up and the 3-year-old take-up, and the early years team are working to address that slight fall, although not significant. It's something we do want to address, because we know the impact that early years education has on families and on that child's development. So we're focusing on that at the moment, and I suspect we'll see a reversal of that. But overall, the education indicators just show what a great place Leicester is to go to school. All the indicators are moving upwards, and it's been really positive. And I'd just like to thank our schools and also teams for the work they're doing to make sure that it is a great place to live and to learn as well. But I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Bugsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report presents a balanced picture of both a service operating under unprecedented financial pressure, whilst also continuing to provide for the children and families of Leicestershire. And it's for that reason, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the staff across the service for both their hard work and their continued dedication. Thank you.
Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to congratulate the team. I think that's a very good report. It's very good to see so much improvement across the board as a general thing. Yes, it could be better, but it is getting better. And I think that, as Councillor Pugsley just said, we're against the financial restraints and what is quite an emotive subject between parents and school teachers. I think the outcome of this report is actually very commendable. I commend you all.
Ms. Taylor, thank you.
Thank you. I've just got one question on page 141, paragraph 40 about the electively home educated. It's still increasing. Obviously, we were saying it was down to COVID for the last sort of 3 or 4 years, but I think we've come to the point now where we can't say it's so much linked to that, and there must be other reason for it. So what work are we taking place? Because electively home educated children are children out of sight, which is extremely dangerous for safeguarding reasons. I'm not saying everyone, but that is the national, that they're unseen children when they're home educated and they're still not got the list that we want from the Department for Education, still not actually come. So I think what we're doing around there to try and encourage families to ensure their children do attend school rather than being home educated.
Thank you. A really good question. EHE remains an area that does keep me awake at night because you don't know what you don't know. And if children aren't seen, they potentially aren't safe. Whilst a number of families do opt for home education as a life choice because it's the right thing they feel for their family, others fall out of the system for different reasons. I think COVID still has had an impact because some of those children have not re-entered the school system or struggled for different reasons. Which is why we are now going to be focusing on our education belonging strategies as one of our key strands, and that'll be the key strategy where all the other education strategies sit underneath now. And we have a belonging conference in March to launch that. I'm really mindful though that with classrooms where you're seeing, used to see 11-12% of children having additional needs, you're now seeing classrooms where 30 or 40% have additional needs. And some of the more recent national information shows that the COVID coupled with children not sitting in their pushchairs from early age and not having the core strength to be able to move and exercise in the way they used to means that there are additional needs right the way across the system. So we are focusing really hard on our belonging strategy to make sure that schools can cater firstly for a broader range of need, because actually in many ways our model of education hasn't changed much since Victorian times. There's a teacher at the front teaching children, whereas actually for the child with ADHD, they need not to be sitting at the front because they're naughty. They need to be allowed to move around the classroom at the back with a TA, a teaching assistant, to support those particular needs. So it is being much more flexible. And we are rolling out something called Universal Design for Learning, which starts looking and expecting that variability in the classroom. And that's part of how we are going to address this, through making sure that children and young people belong not only in their local community, but also belong in their local school and in their classroom and with their peer group and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much. I'll echo the comments. Thank you so much for all of your work today and beyond, and for your team's work. It's incredible. Just one very quick question before I let everyone go, sorry. It is on that take up of the free childcare places, and obviously I know from having my own children, a lot of the information like that gets passed on at health visitor stage. Is it your GP surgery? How much work do we do within our team with the health providers, I guess, because they're going to be the main source of knowledge for a lot of new parents or first-time parents? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, really good point. So health have a duty to inform us where they, for example, where they feel a child has special needs or may have special needs, and we link very closely with them. But the work our teams do with health visitors is really quite exceptional, getting in there with them and meeting those parents and making sure they have all the advice and guidance they need. Of course, there's more we can do, and we're looking at changing the model very slightly so that we can have additional support and capacity within the early years service to meet those needs earlier and to get to meet those families so that we can talk to them about the benefits of that early education, because it's absolutely critical.
If there's no more questions, I'll move on to the date of the next meeting, which is the 3rd of March, and that's at 2 o'clock again. And then the final item is, I have no urgent items, so thank you so much for attending. I hope you all get home safely, and I'll see you all at the budget meeting. I think it's my next one, so I'll see you there.